I believe that Goryo's Vengeance is about to be tier 1 in Modern again. With the gameplay in this video and the fact that it has won massive online tournaments in the past week this deck has been discovered, I will convince you why it's the real deal. The deck today revolves around Underworld Cookbook, being a cheap way to discard cards, fuel artifacts for Urza's Saga, and work alongside the Asmo. It is the centerpiece of the deck. Another hidden gem is Profane Tutor, being a card that seals the deal for our combo by getting us the extra tool that we need. The three main ways that we will win in this video is with Goryo's Vengeance getting back Emrakul or Atraxa, using Asmo by outvaluing the opponent by killing their creatures with the food tokens, and Urza's Saga, making big constructs to attack them. If you doubt this deck, then watch this video because I will change your mind. Going into the first round, on the play we have a great hand. We can turn 1 Thoughtseize to disrupt the opponent, then play a turn 2 Urza's Saga with Profane Tutor so that we can both search the Underworld Cookbook and fetch the Goryo's Vengeance out of the deck. There's no better play than to start off with a Thoughtseize. Before it resolves, I just want to let you know that I have started a Patreon. No pressure to sign up, but if you want to support me with some cool rewards, go check it out. If you just want to support me without the cash, just click the subscribe button, it means a lot. Now the opponent's on Blue-Red Murktide, and I have a tough decision. There's 3 cards I can pick from. It's either Counterspell because I'm worried that I can actually pay for Spell Pierce down the line, it's Spell Pierce because I have a load of non-creatures in hand, or it's Murktide because that's their only threat. I decide here that I'm gonna go for the Spell Pierce because if they want to hold up Counterspell for the rest of the game, that's fine, and it seems like it's going to be difficult to fill up their graveyard for this Murktide region. We pass back the turn, the opponent has a Spirebluff Canal, and a Ragavan. I think the Thoughtseize bug exists. They ship back the turn, we find a Boseiju off the top, so there's only one real play, and that's suspending Profane Tutor so that we have a Demonic Tutor on our upkeep in 2 turns. The opponent plays their Mishra's Bauble, sacks it, and then attacks in, finding a Brainstone off the top of the deck. Brainstone's in the deck because of Urza's Saga. Normally we want to fetch the Cookbook, but when we have the Cookbook and are missing a combo piece, it helps us draw cards to find the combo. Anyways, the opponent plays the Brainstone and passes, holding up their Counterspell. With another land off the top, there's nothing better we can do but play our land and try to make a construct token to block this Ragavan. The opponent plays their land, goes to combat, we make a token, but they have an Unholy Heat to make sure the Ragavan connects. They remove a dead draw in our deck from Atraxa, but what is scary is that if this was on the later turns, they could easily hardcast it with all their treasures. Now the Profane Tutor comes off suspend, and we get to resolve Demonic Tutor. Now the only problem is, we know the opponent has Counterspell, so we have to heavily consider this. As well as, Urza's Saga is about to tick up to 3, meaning I'm gonna get a Cookbook on the board. So here I take the Oval Chase Daredevil. After drawing a Goryo's Vengeance, which is a very good draw, I make a construct, get the Cookbook, play the Saga, and we now have a pseudo combo. Underworld Cookbook lets us discard a card to create a food, that food is an artifact, and Oval Chase Daredevil bounces back to our hand from the graveyard when an artifact enters the battlefield, which is a loop. So we can discard the Daredevil, return it to our hand, and keep discarding it, making loads of food, and making our construct massive. On our end step, the opponent activates Brainstone, so I make a food and loop the Daredevil in response to play around a naked Unholy Heat. To start the opponent's turn, they dash Ragavan. At first you're going to think they're crazy, but now it gives them Delirium so they can Unholy Heat my construct token and attack in. The opponent hits a Blood Fountain off the top of the deck with Ragavan, another card in the deck just to be a good discard outlet. Here instead of casting it, the opponent just plays their Murktide region and holds up Counterspell on our turn. Now let's pause a second on our upkeep here. We have a lot of outs to instantly win this game. Discard spell off the top lets us take the Counterspell, a second Goryo's Vengeance off the top lets us double cast so that we can play around the Counterspell, an Asmo off the top lets the opponent counter the Asmo because it will kill the Murktide region by sacking foods, and then we can Goryo's Vengeance, so it is over 16 outs off the top to instantly win. Now we whiff this draw, but it's completely fine because foods can be sacked for life. So we have a bit more time to draw one of these 16 outs and just gotta hope the opponent doesn't have double Counterspell as they're going to be holding up a lot of mana on our turn. We go down to 5, the opponent plays the Ragavan, and we make 2 foods with the Oval Chase Daredevils and make a construct token with the Urza's Saga. For our draw step, we find a land, which is unfortunate, but we now can't make a second construct because we need to sack 2 foods to stay alive from this Murktide region. So what we do is we get another cookbook, sack a food, sack another food when the Murktide region attacks, and we essentially fog the 6 damage that the Murktide deals. I do fetch on the end step because we're not going to win this game if the opponent has a lightning bolt, but we whiff our draw step again in an Emrakul. I'm going to speed up this game because for the rest of the 2 draw steps we did whiff, unfortunately. The deck just let us down here. We really couldn't get past this second counterspell that the opponent had. Now there is an argument that I could have won this game if I took the Murktide Regent from their opening hand, so it's something to think about. Going into boarding, you really don't want to overboard against a deck like Murktide because you are a combo deck and you're focusing on the Goryo's Vengeance, so I only bring in Nihil Spellbomb and Witherbloom Command to interact with their creatures as well as their graveyard. Going into game 2, we have a very good opening hand. Like we had problems in game 1, counterspells are annoying, and both Urza's Saga and Profane Tutor play around counterspells, which will make the opponent's hand very awkward if they're trying to hold up disruption on our early turns. And here will be a great example. We're going to be playing our Urza's Saga and suspending Profane Tutor here so they can't have Spell Pierce. And the opponent again just shocks in their land and passes, so we're going to be looking to make a construct. After passing back and wasting so much mana, the opponent taps out for a Ragavan and it's time to win the game. We make a construct, we get our Profane Tutor on the upkeep, which is obviously going to find an Emrakul the Aeon's Torn to make them sacrifice their board. We take our draw step, we find another Emrakul, which is quite funny, but we're just going to make mana with Urza's Saga, get the cookbook, play our land, discard the Emrakul, use the Goryo's Vengeance, and if somehow they have something like Force of Negation, we have a Goryo's Vengeance to follow up. Now we can attack in and the opponent has to sack all their mana. The opponent obviously concedes and we move on to game 3. Being on the draw, Witherbloom Command is a bit expensive, so we're going to swap those 2 for 2 Fatal Push to make sure they don't have some pesky Ragavans. Going into game 3, again we have the absolute nuts hand. We have the combo, Tutor, and Overchase Daredevil with an Urza's Saga. Not much more I could ask for. Now you might be surprised, but here we're going to start off with a turn 1 Urza's Saga, and that's because we want the cookbook in play as soon as possible with the Goryo's Vengeance in hand. Yet again, we are going to display the power of Profane Tutor because the opponent has 2 mana up and we can waste that counterspell that they potentially have because we're suspending our card. Now you could argue, Harry, wait a second, what if they don't have counterspell? It doesn't matter. The opponent needs to fill up their graveyard for both Delirium and for Murktide Regent, and if they're not doing something on turn 1 and 2, I think I'm happy with that even if they don't have the counterspell. They dash a Ragavan, find a Profane Tutor off the top which they can't do anything with, and pass back with 2 more open mana. Now I could go for Atraxa Goryos here, but I think it's way better to not only Fatal Push the Ragavan, but also get a Thoughtseize with the Profane Tutor on my upkeep on the next turn, as well as we play around Blood Moon by fetching a basic Swamp with the Bloodstained Mire. After pushing the Ragavan, the opponent shocks in their land and passes back. On their end step, I get the basic Swamp like I mentioned, but I also discard the Atraxa, and this is because I'm afraid of a card like Abrade. While I could discard the Overchase Daredevil, if they abraded the cookbook, I would be screwed because then I have no discard outlet for the Atraxa. So I'm going to discard the Atraxa first, and then we can start looping the Daredevil. After getting a Thoughtseize like an absolute beast, we rip the Emrakul off the top. I think you can see where this game is about to go. I start off with a Thoughtseize, the opponent only has a counterspell, let's get that out of here and put this Emrakul into play and bash. I hope you enjoyed the longer analysis of this Murktide matchup, as I know you guys are skeptical when I say I think a deck is good, so I thought putting it up against the best deck in this video would showcase why I think it's powerful. This deck was actually making Magic the Gathering so easy. In round 2, both games 1 and 2, I just had the insane Goryo's Vengeance hand. And I say insane, I think it just means average. It felt so consistent to get Goryo's Vengeance down if the opponent did not have interaction, it was very easy to make them sack all their lands and permanents. What's even crazier is I was at 3 life against this Blue-Red Prowess deck and we ripped Goryo's Vengeance off the top for our last draw step of the game to make them sacrifice their whole board and go down to 2 life. It was definitely a lucky game. I think the opponent kind of gave up because after I made a big construct with the Urza's Saga and got the Shadow Spear, they ended up conceding the match. Now this deck isn't perfect, and it definitely has bad matchups. Rakdos Scam felt almost unwinnable. Now we are a pseudo combo deck, and they cast so much discard, it was making it almost impossible to win. Not only that, alongside all their discard, they play Dauthi Voidwalker, 4 of main deck Graveyard Hate that also lets them cast my Emrakul or Atraxa if they cast a discard spell with a Dauthi in play. Yep, this matchup was almost unwinnable and they crushed me. Going into the final round, we managed to crush Rhinos in game 1 just by getting a fast Emrakul because they tapped out for a Fire Ice and didn't have a Force of Negation. But things just didn't go our way games 2, because they had a turn 1 Leyline of the Void, and then top decked 2 Violent Outbursts in a row to put 4 Rhinos on the table to end the game. If they just drew 1 Rhinos, we probably would have been fine, but 2 Violent Outbursts in a row was too much. Then in the third game, they just had a lot of disruption, and we just couldn't do much, and we died up to the Rhinos. So unfortunate way to end the league, but we will open the chest for you gambling degenerates. As always, if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you to all of my current Patreons for supporting my content.